All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us on this Sunday morning. As you well know, on Sundays, we like to dig in on the most recent episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier. So welcome to this episode of Debrief, the Falcon and Winter Soldier chat. A little later, we will have some guest hosts joining us to further analyze the episode, things such as the Psych Evals, some of the Easter eggs, things of that nature. But first, as always, we're going to hop right into the Sparknotes. But before I do that, let me give you some quick minutes. Make sure that you like and subscribe, of course, what we have for this YouTube channel. And hit that subscribe button down below. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy many of these analyses that we do. Of course, also, if you can also find us on social media at Twitter, Move and Shake UNLTD, of course, and also on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited. For any of the comments that you guys have, be sure to also use the hashtag that we have for this series. So Falcon Winter Soldier M&SU. So that's Falcon Winter Soldier Movers and Shakers Unlimited. So just in case you guys have some comments or thoughts, not just during this live taping, but also as this live taping gets archived and you have further thoughts that you want to get into, be sure to share that with us. Now, with that out of the way, as I said, I'm going to hop into some spark notes of what happened not only in episode 5, but also in the most recent episode. So episode 5 recap, John Walker loses his title as Captain America following his murder of a flag smasher. He's visited by Val, who many of us know has that moniker of Madam Hydra. Zemo is sent to the raft after being found by Bucky. He asks a favor, Bucky, that is, a favor of the Dora Milaje to get Sam some new gear. Sam visits Isaiah to reflect further on Cap's legacy and also heads home to resolve matters at home with the boat, his family, what have you. The Flag Smashers decide to go after the GRC, and Sam and Buck have a heart-to-heart. And Sam has his great, Rocky training montage. The Flag Smashers continue to close in on the GRC, and we cut to Sam about to suit up with his new gear. So in the most recent episode, we pick up with the GRC stronghold. The Flag Smashers are about to commence their plan. Sam closes in on the stronghold along with assists from Winter Soldier and Sharon. She makes a comeback and appearance. Carly eyes Cap and starts her attack on the GRC. Cap, or Sam, arrives in his new gear, is confronted by Batroc the Leaper. In the chaos of the escaping GRC, the Flag Smashers herd them off in a set of vehicles, both in the air and on the ground. And in pursuit of the Flag Smasher pilot and hostages, Sam saves some law enforcement pilots that are also in pursuit in the view of witnessing onlookers. Winter Soldier corners the ground level Flag Smashers with their hostages. Carly creates a diversion to get away, but it's interrupted by John Walker's arrival. Buck saves the hostages, then assists John Walker, who is cornered by the group of Flag Smashers. Carly places the remaining GRC hostages in danger, leaving John Walker with the choice of pursuing Carly or saving the hostages. Carly sabotages his efforts because he, decides to go after and save the hostages. But Sam steps in to save the hostages in his efforts, again, in the view of witnesses celebrating him in his new role. Batroc causes a diversion to assist Carly and the remaining Flag Smashers to escape from the scene. Sharon manages to corner Carly, revealing herself to be the power broker, which we will get into because I have thoughts. Batroc interrupts proceedings to attempt blackmail of Sharon. She shoots and kills Batroc, resulting in her being shot by Carly. We have the entrance of Sam with Sharon now down. The fight ensues between Sam and Carly. Winter Soldier and John Walker corner apprehend some of the escaping Flag Smashers. Carly corners Sam, but is saved by Sharon. Sam brings fallen Carly to the paramedics. Sam has a heart-to-heart with the GRC. Again, a moment that I want to dig into. He reconnects with Sharon to follow up on his promise to get her pardoned. We have the apprehended Flag Smashers are later bombed by Zemo's butler, or We have a cool nickname, which one of our guest hosts will provide for us per Zemo's instructions. We cut to Val acknowledging Zemo's handiwork and christening John Walker as U.S. agent. Bucky visits his friend, who we remember from earlier, to provide them with closure about his involvement in the murder of their son. Buck thanks his psychiatrist with a completed amends book that he was working on. Sam revisits Isaiah to check in and later surprises him, which was a nice moment, with an exhibit section at that large Captain America exhibit. And then we have a montage of Sam and Buck, celebrating in Louisiana, in Sam's hometown. We're provided with an end credit scene of Sharon being pardoned, but later on the phone, we're seeing her discussing, some shady dealings that she is going to continue doing, again, because she has been revealed as the power broker. So, as I said, guys, so much that transpired and happened on the show. But I will not be alone in analyzing all the goings on in this series finale, which we will also get into why it was a series finale and not a season finale. So without further ado, I want to introduce Chris Pabon, who is the connoisseur over at Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Let me bring him on now. See? How you doing, Chris?
Good morning, Brandon, and good morning to all our viewers. Guten Morgen, meine Freuden. Bonjour, mes amis. Buenos días a todos nuestros amables oyentes. Y buongiorno, amici mia. Brandon, I'm doing great. And once again, I think when we saw this episode, it was proven that constants are death, taxes, and the butler always did it.
Indeed. But again, we do also have an additional guest host. So let me bring him on. He provides many of the reviews on our website and reports on many of the things that go on, be it cons or any other cool events. So let me bring on Josh Pritchett. What's going on, Josh?
Good morning, Brandon. Good morning, Chris. Good morning to everybody out here in Movers and Shakers land. How are we doing today?
Doing great, man. Doing great. All right. So, as I said, guys, this was a jammed-packed episode. And before I hop into, callbacks and Easter eggs and things of that nature, what are your general impressions of this series finale? And if either of you can start, I'll leave it up to you all.
Josh, you want to go first?
Yes, thanks, Chris. Well, like you said a while back, Brandon, I wish this could have been a couple episodes longer. I wish we'd had a big flashback scene with Isaiah Bradley, maybe a flashback episode with Carly to get more of her backstory. But now, of course, we know that if we'd done that, we would have found out sooner that Sharon was the power broker. I think we had a hint about that in the episode before that when she called Batroc. Of course, that could have been explained as like, well, she's someone who has a lot of contacts with the mercenary crowd, and that could have been why she contacted Batroc. Maybe she was going to reveal that Batroc was actually going to be secretly helping Sam and Bucky at the end, because she was paying him a lot of money. But of course, it did turn out, yeah, she was the power broker all along. I thought that was a good twist. So, but yeah, I thought it was a great ending to the show, and I really enjoyed it. I really wish almost this could have been a movie, because I would have loved to have been in a crowded movie theater when Sam goes busting through the window in his Captain America uniform. And hear the applause. And then 2 seconds later, when the guy asks him, "Who are you?" and he says, "I'm Captain America." And I was like, yes! I was like, yeah!
And I want to get into that moment too, because that is definitely I feel like they have an immediate callback of that just within the episode itself. But before that, Chris, your first impressions.
So Brandon, my first impression was that I had to look at the end credits to make sure it wasn't Peter Jackson, who directed this episode. Because with so many multiple happy endings, like everyone having a nice meal by the boat, Bucky walking by the cafe to see the cute bartender with the older gentleman, Sharon getting her pardon. It was reminiscent of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, with all the many multiple happy endings. And
that scene actually reminded me of Star Wars, like the end of like Return of the Jedi when they're like celebrating at the end. It kind of reminded me of that. But go ahead.
No, that too. So I looked at that and it made me think this really needed at least one more episode. For whatever external circumstances affected filming, it seemed like they had reached an impasse and they didn't have that one more extra episode, so they had to just kind of like rush the ending.
Yeah.
I like the series in general, but I think they didn't quite land the ending like a WandaVision did. There were, as an example of things I thought were rushed, was I thought the redemption for John Walker came a little bit too soon.
Oh my gosh, thank you. We will get into that too. Yeah, I feel the same way.
I mean, he chopped the man's head off. It's got to take a little bit more effort than what we saw. I actually did like Sharon revealed as the power broker, because I think far too often the big bad is a guy, and I'm like, no, I mean, women can be the big bad too. So like I was happy to see that it was confirmed that C was the power broker. And yeah, I mean, we might see in other series that perhaps she's working for someone else, but I enjoyed seeing her as the big bad. But then there were other things throughout the episode we can talk about more, about how I felt that her just suddenly getting her job back with, I assume, a very high security clearance didn't really make much sense. But again, I think some of these details is because they really lacked that final episode to be able to wrap things up.
For sure. And that, I feel like that's a great segue into the callbacks. Because one of the first things that I had for the callbacks was the introduction of Sharon into this episode. And I guess you can kind of say it's almost reflective of the way she's actually functioning in the show, of having a two-faced nature or a dual nature. But the fact that she had that camo mask of that we first saw in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, that we originally saw Black Widow use when they had that moment towards the end. With that, I guess you could say that like camouflage mask that she used, which was a nice little nod to that film and what transpired there. I'm trying to think of another one that I can think of offhand, kind of speaking to what you were talking about, Josh, is I don't know if anyone else realized this, but the same guy who first sees Sam as Captain America and says, I thought Captain America was on the moon. He addresses him, is the same exact guy that addresses him as Captain America at the end of the episode. So the one who kind of like questions him as Captain America at first, validates him as Captain America at the end of the episode, which I thought was like a nice kind of like full circle thing of having that same guy have those two moments there. And then even with the callback of the what we had in episode 1 of what Sam did with the hostages, where he took out, or I should say, he took out someone out of a helicopter in that scene, where he was able to like go right through the helicopter and grab a hostage. He did it this time with a flag smasher. With the helicopter, had that same callback there. But other than that, can you guys talk about some other ones that perhaps you guys enjoyed? Whether it's callbacks within the episodes, or what we've had in the MCU, or just Easter eggs of those that are like eagle-eyed cool moments for comic readers.
Well, one thing I liked was Zemo's butler, who we shall from now on know as Evil Alfred. I I like that it was him that set off the bomb, so that Zemo's still got lots of thumbs and lots of pies. That he's not done in the MCU. He may be in a prison cell on the raft, but he's not done just yet. He's still a big part of the MCU, and we're going to be dealing with him for a very long time to come. So I thought that was really quite cool.
Definitely. Chris?
So I have problems with the redemption arc, but I did like seeing the appearance of John Walker in the full U.S. agent costume at the very end. Shout out to that issue of Captain America where we see him. I did like the appearance of the character of the Contessa within the series, and here once again at the end. I do have a little bit of problem with the casting. I mean, so far, I think Disney's had the Midas touch with casting, but I'm looking and I'm wondering, was Evergreen or Monica Bellucci not available for this character? I'm going to give it a lot of leeway and patience, but I was just like, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I see her, and all I can think of is Selena Meyer. But I want to touch back on something that you mentioned. I did like the helicopter series in the 6th episode, but I sort of thought they went back to the helicopters too soon. Like, we had that montage in episode 1, and I felt bringing it back in episode 6, undoubtedly very cool. But it's like, it's just too soon, I think, in one season to do the helicopter thing twice. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the reason why is, what this episode has the task of doing, and I want to get into that too, is it has a task of a lot of things. And this will probably be a good segue into Psych Evals in a moment. But it has a task of not only, and we keep talking about christening and coordinating, it has the task of coordinating Sam as a new Captain America. So you have to demonstrate, what he brings to the table that, makes him unique. And the fact that he's in the air is what differentiates him from any other iteration of Captain America. So you really have to, put emphasis on that, which is why I understand they had that division of the pursuit on the ground and on the air. And even when if you notice, when he asked Winter Soldier to help him out, and he says, "Hey, they're getting away," he was like, "Well, I don't do the air, man. That's you. Like, I don't do that. You're on the ground. I'm on the ground." So, like, to give him his moment to demonstrate, what he brings to the table, because he doesn't have a super soldier serum, so you don't have that element to play with. So, in essence, I think just with the character itself is that they're going to play with facets of Captain America. They're going to kind of do a hybridization, it seems like, where they're going to play with facets of Captain America or elements of Captain America that he brings, but also elements that he may bring with Iron Man, because like the fact that he can fly and he has all this tech kind of plays along with that. So it's almost like a hybridization of those two leaders of the Avengers, where he brings both of those to the table, since he doesn't have the luxury of doing the the super soldier serum. But I mean, I agree with what you're saying of kind of going back to that, but I appreciated that callback.
So do we agree that his suit is probably all vibranium? And so if it is, does that enhance like his strength and reflexes?
I thought about that, but in order for that to happen, I would think that it would need to cover his entire body, and the only thing that he has is the pack itself. So unless they adjust it in, going forward and give him an entire suit, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, JP?
I don't think that he's got any, extraordinary strength or speed after that. I think he's just very well trained, and he knows how to make his aerial skills work best for him. I mean, Chris, I think you're alluding to the scene where he's trying to stop the armored truck,
right?
With the hostages from falling in. That was kind of just a little bit of physics and a whole lot of vibranium with the shield and pressing up against it. And Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, he
exactly
also had his help. He had some of the
Red Wings.
the Red Wings helping him as well, kind of like what we saw in Spider-Man, where they were acting as a way to push as well, if I remember.
Right. Yeah, they were basically using basic rocket technology that, okay, I'm not sure exactly what powers those rockets, but evidently they were powerful enough that they could hold that armored truck in place and then enable him to shift it around so the construction beams could support it until they could get all those people off of there. I think that's all that was. I mean, he's not going to go in any arm wrestling contests with Thor or the Hulk anytime soon, so you don't need to worry about that. But I think he has the suit. Chris, I think that was a great point you made though about Sam now being a hybrid of both Cap and Iron Man, because he's using technology that's kind of Iron Man, kind of the repulsor lift technology, but he's also the symbol. He's the leader. He's the guy who
the rallier, which I want to get into
yes,
too.
Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. And he is the guy that is trying to inspire and push people to be better. Like when we have the scene where he's confronted the GRC people and saying, "No, you have to do this better. You can't just kick these people aside just because they're inconvenient. You have to do right by them." And that's exactly what Steve Rogers would have said.
For sure. Chris, do you have anything to add? Because I was going to hop right into our next topic, but go ahead.
Oh, it was just a lack of a callback, and this is what I mean is that one of my pet peeves is that big events always seem to happen in New York or Los Angeles, right? It's like those are the only two cities where anything can happen here in the U.S. So again, the GRC meeting is happening in New York, and all of this is going down, and this is the MCU. So was this the point where Spider-Man was on his European vacation? Like we have done Keeley Sharp in the first episode. So it's the lack of a callback of anyone for the MCU of this happening in New York. Like if they had set this in Miami or Denver, I'd be like, okay, yeah, there's no other MCU characters based in those cities, so that's why all this goes down. It's only those characters. But by placing it in New York, it's kind of they left open the question mark of like, hey, where are all the other MCU characters based in New York?
Doctor Strange,
yes,
Spider-Man,
exactly.
like you have like all these
Luke Cage,
powerful, like
exactly.
No, that's a good point.
The lack of callbacks at this point, I would point out.
I'm sure they'll try to retcon it by saying like all this other stuff was happening during that time. So maybe for Spider-Man, because he's on the run, he didn't want to like show himself or something. Maybe that's why he didn't resurface. And maybe like Strange is busy doing something that he couldn't do it. I'm sure they'll explain it. I know a lot of times, I mean, they can't explain every single thing, obviously, but I will give Marvel credit. They take the criticism to heart and they try to find a way a lot of times to retcon certain things, to fix things that they, in retrospect thinking, maybe we should have changed that. They're right. That really didn't make sense.
It's my personal pet peeve for directors and producers. We have Portland, Denver, Miami. We have other cities. It shouldn't just be Los Angeles or New York.
Yeah,
definitely. So hopping right into the Psych Evals, there were a couple of characters that I wanted to get into, and I feel like outside of course, Sam, who has his coronation, is the character of Carly and how radicalized she is and driven. So much so, up to that point, she was teetering one way or another, but she showed, semblance of conscience in terms of, what impact her decisions were having. And now, because she's become so radicalized, you can argue that now she's just so driven with her plan that she actually becomes the very thing that she's trying to fight against. So where protecting, a group of people, she's willing to kill, in essence, the members of the GRC just to carry out her plans. Where at the beginning of the series, while she was like teetering back and forth, one could argue that she could have still been pulled off the ledge. And I mean, there are a couple of times where characters are trying to pull her off the ledge. You know, you have Bucky try to do that in his conversation on the phone with her. You have that happen also in the interaction that she has with Sam later on in the episode where they had that standoff. So, you know, what are your thoughts on kind of that dynamic of her, at least in my opinion, and maybe you guys feel differently. I'd love to know your thoughts of her becoming the very thing that she, you know, in the beginning was trying to fight against, in essence. For Chris or Josh, out of the view.
Well, it does kind of go back to what Nietzsche said about people who fight monsters need to be careful that they don't become monsters. And
exactly.
That when you're looking into the abyss is looking back at you. You can't just chalk this up. Oh, she got a bad batch of super soldier serum, and you know she's become unstable. No, she was driven by anger. I mean, there are a lot of good people that you know they think, okay, you know, I'm just going to do this. This is going to get their attention, but it escalates.
Yeah,
and violence in these situations. It is not a good way to handle this. I know that's cliche. I know that whenever I say that, somebody thought, well, what about this or that? What about that? But, you know, that was done, you know, something like the American Revolution was done at a different time by different people. You can't just go out and say, okay, well, you know, your founders did this. Well, yeah, but they didn't have your resource. They didn't have your education. You have other methods to get people on your side. Right. And I think, you know, when you have somebody like a Carly, or in another instance, Anakin Skywalker, who just gets frustrated that things are not happening fast enough, things are not working the way they want them to, they go down a very dark road, and they end up hurting the very people they think they're trying to help, you know, along the way. So,
yeah. Chris?
With all due respect to Marvel fans, I'm going to cross over to the DCU and quote Harvey Dent. You either die the hero or you live long enough to become the villain. And in this instance, Carly became the villain. You know, it's not something that happens abruptly. You can see it's beginning to develop. And I think it's because she has information that the rest of us do not have. That, you know, she has the personal experiences of living on the ground with the people and seeing how they suffered. So it didn't take one event. It took a series of events. If you think about it, it's like a hill, and she begins to come down, roll down the hill slowly, and then picks up pace until she can't stop herself. And she reached a point where she thought, okay, violence is the only answer here because it's the only language that people understand. And so, you know, again, I would have liked to have seen another episode where we saw a little bit more of a progression towards that, of going away from the conscious, like, I really can't do this, like, yeah, I have to do this. But, you know, we didn't see that. I didn't like that she perished at the end. And I also think the movement would carry on beyond her. And I thought I saw that when the soldier closes the door and says, like, you know, one world. And I'm like, okay, this is going to continue on. And then, you know, the transport blows up. Hopefully that soldier wasn't nearby and he survives, right?
Sure.
But I hope that the idea of the movement continues beyond her, because that's sort of like the idea of like something that catches on and lives beyond one person. But I liked her character, and I would not have killed her. If anything, I think I would have placed her on the raft right next to Zemo.
I don't think she's dead. I'm going to get into my reason why, but I don't think she's dead. But in speaking further about her psyche or her thought process at that time, I just found it interesting because, like, she even gets so extreme that she, you know, alienates herself from all of her fellow flag smashers, where they're like, well, wait, this isn't what we're about. We're not about like killing people. And even more so where she triggers John Walker in talking about, you know, his friend, where she's like, well, he didn't really matter. But everybody matters. That's the whole point. Like, you know, you in your argument, you want to talk about, you know, these two factions, the people that are now returning, as well as the folks that were who didn't get dusted. You know, both elements matter, which, you know, Sam gets into. Like, both factions matter. You know, one faction is not more important than the other. You know, you have to understand the issues and the problems that arise in both parties. For those that, you know, perhaps were around the entire time, and even during the dusting, you know, they have to go back to the status quo now that people are coming back. And then the same people that got dusted that now have to readjust to coming back to the world 5 years later, and how much has changed in 5 years, and dealing with that. You know, you saw that in WandaVision. You know, some characters may have died in that time, and, you know, how do you deal with that? People that you lost in that time, that you weren't there to be with them, or just worldly things. You know, maybe a place, and I'm brain farting on what it was. I want to say it was Spider-Man, where, you know, it was referenced, hey, like, we went back to our place and now someone else lives there now. Like, we don't have a home anymore. We got completely displaced. So, you know, all these various elements that are, you know, in play, and understanding both sides of it, and not becoming so radicalized that you only see one side.
I think it's kind of clear that when the Avengers brought everyone back, they didn't necessarily consider the unintended consequences.
Indeed. And other than, and because I want to get to Sam last, is talking about Bucky talking about Bucky and John Walker, because with Bucky, it seems like for this episode, it provided him with a redemptive arc. And not to say that he hasn't been redeemed up to this point. I would say more redemption in his own eyes, for himself, for his own benefit. Because, I mean, for us as the audience, we know he's already redeemed himself in siding with the Avengers, and you know, helping out where he could, you know, in the battle with Thanos, and even, you know, in what transpired in Civil War as well, and trying to take down, you know, that base. But for him, it, just like Sam was saying in the prior episode, it allowed him a way, since he is now, you know, taking ownership and providing people with closure. He was also provided with closure for himself, as he was able to save those hostages, and now he has folks that see him in a different light. Because up to this point, I feel like even though people identified him as an Avenger, there was still kind of a shady element that people felt towards him because of his history, and because of other things that he had done, you know, in his time as Winter Soldier. So now, hopefully, in that interaction that he had with the hostages, and being able to feel like he was able to redeem himself and to save them, that he has that validation for himself, because a lot of it was trying to seek the validation of others. And now, even in that moment of finally confronting, you know, his friend, and letting him know that he had a hand in, you know, the son's murder, he's able to, you know, finally get closure, because he's providing other people with closure and assistance. But, you know, what are your thoughts on, you know, what happened in this last episode with Bucky?
I'll go first here. As far as Bucky goes, I like the fact that he goes to see the father, but I needed at least a minute more, you know, at least to see the father have some rage, or like cry with him. I mean, the scene cuts much too quickly, and he's just walking away. For half a second, I thought, did he Winter Soldier the dad? But
oh, man.
Of course, when I saw him at the bar, I was like, okay, no, he's okay. I needed, that scene was very powerful, very good, but I needed like 30 seconds more to see like the reaction of the dad. And I think in the evaluation of Bucky, we see him being able to finally open up and trust. Like he trusts Sam, and he begins to open up to Sam's family, which is a sort of representative of him opening up to the world, because it's right. Sam's right. He was avenging, but he wasn't really fixing. And so you could say that some of it started in the previous episode when he takes all the bullets out from the gun and symbolically
against Zemo, right?
Because that's showing that he stopped avenging. So I think it was a good pace to show the redemption. I think it really could have hit home with just 30 extra seconds with the dad that we didn't get.
Fair. Josh?
I really have to applaud that Bucky really, it did take a lot of courage for him to finally go to his friend and say, I did this. I wasn't, even though he tried to say, well, he could say, well, I wasn't in control, but he's owning it.
Yeah.
And I don't think the guilt is completely gone, but I do think he can live with it now that, and he can move on and try to be, try to find some happiness because he certainly deserves that. He is a good man. I agree with Chris. I wish we'd seen a little bit more there where the old man, broke down, started crying and yelled at Bucky, or, they embraced or he just said, I forgive you. I understand. Something like that. That just
even if he didn't,
that was so abrupt. Again, it goes back to what we've been saying, that this should have been 8 or 9 episodes, so we had more room to play with things. But it was good of him to do that. He did show a lot of personal courage in doing that.
For sure. And I was going to say, in thinking about, so as you guys can see, there's a horn going off outside. But anyway, I digress. Maybe you guys don't hear it.
Can I have one more thing to what I just said?
Yes, go ahead, JP.
It just occurred to me. Guilt is a powerful weapon. I was listening to this thing on TED Talk the other day about guilt and grief. And it occurs to me, guilt is a terrible weapon. And the longer, if Bucky had just said, okay, I'm never going to tell my friend this. I'm going to go through, be the surrogate son for the rest of his life. I'm going to take on all those responsibilities, and there's some advantages. I could start dating the bartender and see where that goes. I can just put that. There will always be somebody else who would know. Sam would never say anything, but now that we know who Sharon is, she could use that against him. Someone could always use it against him. And so, yeah, that guilt can no longer be used against him, though.
Definitely. That's a great point. And that's actually a great segue. We were just talking about Sharon. So in talking about Sharon and her reveal as the power broker, as I said at the top, I have some thoughts on that. While I agree absolutely to what you're saying, Chris, about having a female villain and not always having a male villain, I absolutely agree with that. However, if that is the way that you're going to go, my argument is that please, set it up properly in a way where it, connects, because while it's great to have her as a villain and taking a more prominent role in the MCU, so to speak, if we go back and go through many of those episodes, many of her actions, even if you're trying to say that she is, acting with the dual nature, they don't make any sense. Like, I'm thinking back on the moment with the scientist that did the super soldier serum. Why would she allow that to go down? And she seemed a little too okay with it that the scientist was killed if he played such a major role in what she was trying to accomplish. And then additionally, with the history that Zemo sets up for this character, and talking about, how long this character has been around, why it provide that explanation that, from, and I'll look at it again, but based on, if I recall, based on what he explained, the character had been around since Civil War. Like, they had been around for quite a long time. And that tells me, okay, so Sharon was good prior to that. So how was she the power broker at that time? And also, if you want to argue, you know, maybe she did this within the 5 years, within that time prior to the blip. You know, there's been, and I'll look at it again because I do recall seeing it too. When they had it in Endgame, she was one of the photos that came up as people that were missing. So, like, is it that they just didn't realize that she didn't get dusted, or was she in fact dusted? And Marvel, you know, the MCU, the folks of the brain trust of the MCU didn't realize that, oh wow, like she was actually dusted. So maybe that doesn't make sense that she was the power broker during that, you know, 5-year gap. So I mean, that is my thing. And then also, in talking about what we were saying with, we were talking about this off stage, Chris, about the circumstances of this show and the limitations that they had due to the pandemic, understandably, where they had to condense a lot of storylines. In fact, they even changed some storylines where they, from what I understand, there was a storyline involving a virus that was going to get out. And we didn't get that, you know, based on them reshaping the story because of them trying to wrap up what happened in the story and to get it out in time for the release. We just didn't get that element. So it begs the question. It makes me wonder that, was Sharon always the power broker, or was she a quick retcon that they did based on the circumstances of them having to condense so much into what we got in the six episode arc? Was it actually somebody else? And maybe because they didn't really, you know, consider all the other things that they explained beforehand, that they thought that they could, you know, get away with, you know, placing her in that role of power broker instead of someone else that they had in mind. But you know, what are your thoughts on that reveal and your thoughts?
Josh, you want to go?
Yeah, I have a few points I'd like to make, a couple of theories. First of all, Hydra as a group has always had its eye on the long game, and they have always been able to sacrifice one or two heads so that the body itself can survive. So, you know, I don't think that, I think you're right, Brandon. They were retconning her character all the way back to Winter Soldier, where she first showed up, to say, okay, she had been put in initially to kind of keep an eye on Steve Rogers, but now we could say that, okay, she was a Hydra agent who was sent to keep an eye on him. And then when she realized that, oh, okay, it looked like Cap and Falcon and Fury and Hill and the Black Widow were going to win the day in Winter Soldier, she decided to make it look like she was turning on Hydra so she could stay in good with Captain America for the long term, because it was clear that plan failed. And then, of course, she again helps them in Civil War. And then, obviously, of course, she did set up the Super Soldier program with the scientists in Madripoor. But then, of course, she gets dusted. She comes back, or we think she got dusted. She could have faked her own dusting, you know. And
That's
then
true.
we have another idea, though. Do we know for sure this is the real Sharon? How do we know that maybe somebody in Hydra didn't just take her out and they're walking around with a Sharon mask and pretending to be her now? And you know, because she's somebody that, okay, Sam and Bucky and the other Avengers presumably will trust, and also, you know, she's somebody that a lot of people apparently trust, so why not? And also, could she not also be a rogue Skrull? You know, could she be the Carly of the Skrulls? That, okay, she's, you know, radicalized, and, you know, instead of working with the Skrulls who want to be allies with the humans, or at least that presumably that's the direction we're going at the end of WandaVision, she's doing her own thing so that, you know, long term to further the goals of the Skrull people in her mind. That's another thought I just had. So we need to see more to know more, but I guess, we are going to see that with the announcement of Captain America 4 coming up. That I guess we will get to know more. Plus, we still have the Loki show and the Ms. Marvel show, so who knows? We could see Agent 13, as she was known in the comic books, could be showing up again very soon. So,
Indeed, Chris.
So, I have learned throughout the different MCU shows and movies never to underestimate an Agent Carter. But that said, I think there is a consistency of glaring plot holes when it came to Sharon. For example, when she's in Madripoor, there's the talk about how difficult it is that she can't even see her parents for the past 5 years. How difficult it is until it isn't, because she just throws on a mask and is able to get to New York when they need her.
Yeah.
Or the fact that she's a trained agent and she shows up without a vest. For that final showdown with Carly, and no, she's a trained SHIELD agent. You and I would show up to one of those things without a vest because, well, we wouldn't have access to one. But I have a hard time believing she wouldn't have a vest that would have protected her when she gets shot. And then Sam basically leaves her to bleed out, but yet somehow she manages to crawl out and get to the street level. And she's like, I'll live. There was a lot of inconsistencies, and again, going back to her hearing, as I mentioned earlier, that all of a sudden she's going to get her job back. Well, which job is that? Is that the SHIELD? Because there's not really a SHIELD right now. Or do they mean the CIA job? And then all of a sudden she's just going to get a high-ranking security clearance, a person who just reappeared. And I hear both of you on, did she blip or not? If I was on the run and an opportunity presented itself, and I'm a trained agent, I would pretend that I vanished too in the blip, because that would allow people not to be looking for me. And as far as the power broker goes, well, we don't know if the power broker is more of a title than a person, sort of like a royalty title. It could be that in the time that she spent in Madripoor, that somehow she met the then power broker and then took the title herself. So I'm just going to toss that out there. Is the power broker more of a person, or is it more of a title? So as Josh said, we will perhaps learn of this in future series. The one thing I do want to touch on what Josh said about the Skrulls is that I did think that there was a lack in the season ending or series ending of a tie-in to the larger movement that's going on. There definitely was a tie-in at the end of WandaVision, and I didn't get the sense that there was that tie-in to something larger that's happening. A little bit when Val tells Walker things are about to get weird. I guess it's a little bit of that, but it wasn't as direct as perhaps I am used to.
For sure. And bringing up Walker, diving into him, one thing that I found interesting is with his character and him being redeemed. I loved how you commented on that, Chris, towards the beginning when we were chatting, and that arc I felt happened far too quickly.
Yes.
But before I get into why I feel like it happened too quickly, one thing that I will say that I appreciated is that he had that moment again of feeling like he was a failure, and I like the juxtaposition that they had of him. If you guys recall, when he was getting ganged up on by the Flag Smashers, and he had his medal on the inside of his shield, so it was almost as if his medal was staring him in the face of his failure of not being able to take down the Flag Smashers, where he was looking at this, he was like, gosh, I earned this medal, why am I not succeeding in getting rid of these Flag Smashers? It was blatantly staring him in the face of, yeah, you earned this, but again, you're not really Captain America, or you haven't really earned having that title or that mantle. So I don't know if that was what the writers were going for, but at least that's how it felt in him, kind of getting traumatized of seeing that medal as he, staring him in the face as he was being beaten down by the Flag Smashers. But in talking about his redemption, and I think again this goes back. We keep talking about the casualty of how short the season was, and in terms of the number of episodes given to tell the story, is it seemed like too much of a heel change of him going from 0 to 100. I mean, just as you said, in the last episode, he was a murderer. So, like, to go from that and to all of a sudden be okay and be fine, like, I understand, that you would have that arc for him, but I feel like it would take longer for him to reach that point. So, we were just talking about Captain America 4. It would make more sense for that arc to happen perhaps in Captain America 4 if he appeared in that, versus it just being wrapped up in this series. Like, give me an example, and a good way that they kind of try to explain that quick heel change is that moment where he had to choose between the hostages and he had to choose between Chase and Carly. I found that it would have been far more interesting. Well, I can talk. Far more interesting if he went after Carly and did not save the hostages. Where, like, he's so intent on his mission that, he is making the horrible decision of not saving the hostages. And again, showing how he is different from, Bucky, and how he's different from Sam. So, again, I understand the reasoning behind why they made that decision, because they're more than likely trying to wrap up his arc within the series. But I would argue that it would have been far more interesting had his arc continued beyond the series and whatever else he showed up in to redeem himself, not necessarily to have it wrap up in this show. Yeah, like it was like completely like, it completely threw me, because like having that and then all of a sudden he's like buddy with Bucky and with Sam, towards the end in that third act of trying to take down the Flag Smashers. It just didn't fit. It felt out of place, based on everything that had happened thus far prior, and just to have it wrap up that quickly. But before I get into Sam and my issues with that, because I was telling you, Josh, I have some really probably not very popular to say, but it is a point. But if you had anything else to add about Jay Walker or John Walker for either of you.
Yeah, I think psychologically it showed a lot of self-awareness on his part to put the medals on the inside of the shield so he could look at it, because
as a constant reminder,
having this reminder of what he's lost, of what he's, of this enrages him, and it forces him to act. It's he's psyching himself up. He knows looking at these medals pisses him off. Sorry, I hope it.
No, you're good.
It makes him angry. It's like me in the gym and I'm lifting weights and I'm gonna think of something I don't like. Something's making me mad. I'm gonna bench that 300 pounds like crazy. I'm gonna go nuts, and that's what he's doing right there. There's one other thing I really want to add there about John, and this is something that's just been bothering me all weekend. Is John's wife. What is with this woman? Does she have no personality of her own? All she does throughout is she just keeps enabling him. She's enabling it. Oh, it's okay that you cut that guy's head off. No problem, honey. I still love you. What's going on with her?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't really give her a whole bunch to do. Hopefully, going forward, with that character, they give her more license to do more, to be more active in the story. But I will agree with you, like they don't really give her that much to do. So it it causes you to question like the character in and of itself because
right.
yeah.
Like, John takes this super soldier formula. He doesn't know how it's going to affect him. He doesn't know how it's going to affect her, but she's okay with it. Okay, I could go on about her, but we do need to move on, I guess. So
Indeed. Chris, anything before I hop into Sam as the last portion, or
stay the course. Walker, up until this point, had proven himself to be a jerk. It would have been totally in character with everything we'd seen that he chose to go after Carly rather than saving the armored car. I mean, that was the moment that was too much for me. No, this is too quick, too soon. And, one thing I want to see regarding the shield is that, well, first of all, that shield stood up a heck of a lot longer than I thought it would when I saw him make it in the garage. I could only assume good old Pennsylvania steel. What I was hoping to see was a moment where he would throw the shield at Sam, and Sam would throw the shield back, and the vibranium shield would just cleave the steel shield in two to sort of demonstrate, I am Captain America now. And I think we lacked a moment like that. And then it was just too much. Oh, let us show that he can play well with others in the sandbox, and he's actually friends with Bucky and with Sam. Like, no, this is not the guy that we had seen all up until now. I mean, again, stay the course, have him run away, because this would have been in character with all the series of bad decisions he's made. Go after Carly, not save the truck.
Indeed. And speaking about Sam, so getting into the part that I said may not be the most popular. As I was mentioning at the top of the episode, I feel like what they're going to be doing with that character to, allow him to have his uniqueness is having that hybridization of characteristics that he shares from Captain America as well as from Iron Man. And in speaking to that and talking about that rallying piece, I loved that he had that moment with the GRC of having that heart to heart and discussing, what's at play and what they need to do to be better. I just didn't like how it was executed. Like I didn't like the fact that it was like public in front of like all the news like that. I felt like it could have been, and again, hindsight being 2020, like I get it, because again, this is the character's coronation and it has to be public like that to have him be accepted in that mantle as Captain America to the public, to the world at large. However, I feel like it would have been really interesting if all of this happened maybe in a moment where he had saved the GRC, and maybe it was like in a conversation just between the both of them, and maybe someone just happened to take a picture of it or take a video of it and it went viral, versus it being center stage with all the news there. The only reason why I say that, I know it'll probably sound like a silly point, but just that idea that what we feel is different about Sam versus other false iterations of Captain America, and case in point would be with Jay Walker, is for Jay Walker, a lot of him is with that bravado of saying I am Captain America and I stand for this, and it's very showy in terms of showing it to the public. And what's different about Sam is that he's intrinsically like that. Like he's going to be that way regardless of whether someone is watching him or not, and he's always going to have those characteristics whether someone is watching him or not. So like in that moment of him doing it with the news, all the news channels and everything, it made it seem like he was doing that in within the situation of being in front of everybody. And I know personally, or say we know personally, that is just the way the character is. He's like that. He's going to be like that regardless. So it would have been far cooler had they had a moment like that just between those two parties, and maybe there was a third party that he wasn't aware of, that was able to record that, and then they posted it online and it went viral, and you still have it executed the same way of kind of forcing the GRC to rethink the way that they do things. But it demonstrates that, okay, Sam, regardless of whether he's being watched by the news, regardless of whether, you know, he's in this public space, he's still going to, you know, address people the same way, and rally people and discuss issues the same way, regardless of the circumstance. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, buddy. I
Fair
liked
enough.
it. It kind of goes back to this lingering thought of why Steve chose Sam to succeed him, because he had the same heart. He had that courage to say, to put. It's like what Cap says in the comic books. If you know you're right, even if you're at the river stage, plant your feet there. And if the world tells you to move, you say no. You move. And that's what he's saying is, no, you have to move. You have to make this right. Because you know what you're doing is throwing these people out is wrong. And maybe it's a little bit unbelievable that, okay, all the TV cameras and the microphones turn on him at that moment and they see him saying that. But it's what people need to hear, that, you know, Captain America is not the guy. He's not standing up for the government or the people who run the government. He's standing for them. He's standing for the people. He's standing for the idea. That's Cap. That's not, you know, that's not John Walker. That's not, you know, he's standing for something. He's standing for something more than that. And that's, you know, that's what Steve Rogers wanted himself to be, and that's what he saw in Sam. But, you know, just another thing about Sam, when he first meets Sam is running a veterans rehab group therapy thing, and Cap knew, yeah, the world is going to need a healer to heal it after everything that has just gone on, and Sam could do that. That's why he chose him, because he didn't just need a special forces guy. I mean, Steve Rogers was not a special forces guy or anything. He was a 98-pound weakling that couldn't get in the army until the Erskine, you know, gave him the formula and made him into a super soldier, and then he became the greatest soldier of them all. But it needed someone who had the same heart he had, but also had the ability to be a healer, and that's, you know, what he's doing. So, you know,
Definitely. Chris?
Right message, wrong delivery system. The whole series has kind of struggled around the legacy of Steve Rogers. What would Cap do? And, you know, Cap wasn't one for big press conferences. I mean, in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, he doesn't hold a press conference to let the world know, oh, by the way, S.H.I.E.L.D. has been taken over by Hydra. I think that a better delivery system would have been, after they saved the GRC members, if one of the members says, we've got to rethink what we're doing here. Like, if the prompt had been, like, the main guy, the senator dude, saying, okay, we got to go back and do this vote, and just one of them saying, no, wait a minute, we can't do this. And then Sam weighing in privately amongst them saying, like, you know, no, we can't because of this, and someone capturing it. And like you said,
Exactly.
and that going viral, then the world to see, and then the world think, oh, wow, yeah, that guy's right. Like, this guy is Captain America. So I do agree with you. So Josh, yeah, I'm kind of on the other side of the table with you in this, that it was the right message, but it was the wrong delivery system.
Yeah, like I said, Josh, I don't have any problem with everything that was said. I agree with everything you said, and I agree with everything that Sam says in that sequence. My issue was the setting. Like, that was my only issue, is the setting, not what was said at all. Like, I agree with everything, and I agree with what you're saying in terms of his character and why he was selected. It's just that setting piece that just seemed just didn't work quite right for me. But for, like I said, completely subjective, guys, for each their own on how it falls for each of us. Now, getting into theories and what ifs. I know, Josh, we were just talking about Captain America 4. But before we hop into that, I know we already had like that we had another indication of perhaps what happened to Steve and him being referenced as being on the moon again. So maybe they will pay that off going forward. Maybe they'll pay it off in this now, announced in development Captain America 4, or maybe it'll pop up in another Disney Plus series. What are your, respective thoughts, on that, and perhaps maybe some other things that, may be on the way?
Well, I think that we are seeing, of course, the dawning of, I guess, phase 4 or 5 now in the MCU. I think it's not impossible that Steve Rogers, because if you go back to the original comic book where a lot of this is inspired by, Steve passed the title to Sam because he had lost the super soldier formula. It had been erased from his system, and he suddenly aged to what he would basically be a man in his 90s. But he was still a man who was being very active, who was, had taken over from Nick Fury as head of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah. So there is a possibility. I mean, we see Nick Fury out in outer space with the Skrulls evaluating what's going on out there. And we've heard a rumor that Chris Evans might very well be coming back for one more thing. We don't know what it is.
Right.
Why is it impossible that maybe Steve might be on the moon, possibly, coordinating with Nick Fury about something else? I don't think we've seen the last quite yet of Steve Rogers in that regard. I do think we will see Sharon Carter pop up again, has Miss Power Broker, whatever we want to call her, that she will be behind a lot of stuff moving forward. I think there's, and okay, just to get into this real quick, get back to Zemo. He's on the raft. Who runs the raft?
Ross.
Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. Why, when are we going to see a Thunderbolts movie or movies or TV show with Zemo essentially leading a group of superpowered supervillains who have been repackaged to be superheroes in this team called the Thunderbolts? Okay, that's possible. Do it kind of like the Marvel version of the Suicide Squad. But we've also got another thing. We've got Contessa Val out there, and she's got U.S. Agent. What if she's going to launch the Dark Avengers? An Avengers that's more under her control, that would be field commanded by John Walker as the U.S. Agent. You've already got the Abomination who could step in for the Hulk. You've got numerous other characters, who could probably be recruited. You've got Justin Hammer. He could be their Iron Man, etc. There's a lot that they could do with that. So I am very excited about all the possibilities. There's just endless ideas here that they could do with.
For sure.
Yeah.
Chris? I know you had a theory with Val, so I would love for you to share.
Well, my biggest what if, first of all, is whether I should actually drink the super soldier serum. But after watching the theories, I've decided that Zemo is right, and this is too much trouble, so I am decided I'm not going to drink the serum.
Yeah.
Secondly is, I think that we are going to see some reference to Steve Rogers and Nick Fury. Moon, space. There could be a clandestine base on the blue area of the moon. As we know in Marvel Comics, the blue area of the moon is habitable. So I definitely think there's something to these constant references of, oh, Captain America, he's on the moon. I think we'll see that. I don't think it's going to necessarily take Thunderbolt Ross to get Zemo off the raft, because it seems like everyone escapes from the raft. It's not that much of a high security facility. I don't think there's room for. I definitely think we are going to see a team. I don't think there's room for a Thunderbolts on a Dark Avengers. The presence of Val would make me think that we're going to see a Dark Avengers and not a Thunderbolts team, because if we were going to see Thunderbolts, I think we would have seen Ross by now. That might change perhaps with the Black Widow movie, because that was supposed to come out before all of this. But I think it's more likely we'll see a Dark Avengers team, perhaps of like Walker, maybe Taskmaster, which is going to be introduced in the Black Widow movie, possibly Abomination. I'm sure something is going to come out of the Armor Wars that we're going to see in 23. Perhaps the Swordsman, who we're going to see introduced in Hawkeye at the end of the year. But I definitely think we are going to see a team that's going to come out. And I think you need a big unifying event to bring all the other heroes together into a new Avengers team. And I think one storyline they could adopt from the comic books is the Siege of Asgard. Because as we know, Asgard is on Earth now. It's not on Montana. It's in Norway. But events could unfold that lead to like, oh, we can't have gods in this small town. And that would bring Thor back, and that would bring other Avengers, possibly even a Steve Rogers, back together to like defend Asgard. So I think a Siege of Asgard might be in the future, 2 or 3 years from now. And I absolutely agree. We have not seen the last of Sharon. I think she's going to pop up more. And, it'll be interesting to see. We already know we have a Skrull invasion coming, which has, oh God, help me out. The woman who played Dany in Game of Thrones.
Emilia Clarke.
Emilia Clarke, which I am a little worried about. As I've said to some of you before, she just seems to be a bad luck charm for franchises. Terminator Genesis, Solo, but I think that we are going to see a team. I think it's going to be Dark Avengers. I think we're definitely going to see more of Sharon popping up. It might be a bit of a chess match between Val and Sharon. Again, the character. I love the character of the Contessa. It's just I just have some doubts with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. But I think we're going to need an event to bring everyone back together. And I think I think they're using the TV series to pull together a team. I think we're going to need an event to pull together a new Avengers. And I think that's going to be a Siege of Asgard. And finally, I don't think we should sleep on a Young Avengers, because I think kind of under the radar, Isaiah Bradley's grandson, Wanda's kids. We're going to see Casey Lang introduced pretty soon in the Ant-Man movie. We're going to see Kate Bishop in the Hawkeye movie. I think they're quietly setting the grounds for like a Young Avengers.
Yeah.
All great points. Interesting ideas. Yeah, go ahead,
There's
JP.
still one more thing in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Chris, you mentioned the blue area of the moon. Now, of course, we usually associate that, us longtime Marvel fans associate that with the Inhumans. That's where the Inhumans kingdom is. But because that did not work out so well because of the mini-series on ABC and everything, there's nothing that says you can't, use that for the Eternals. Because they're coming up. So maybe we might see something where, okay, the Eternals become like an ally. We know that some of the Eternals have been Avengers at certain points. So why not, say that, okay, maybe the Eternals, main city isn't located there, and maybe Cap is there, coordinating, the secret wars or whatever's about to go down.
Well, it's fascinating you mentioned that, because I just read yesterday the latest rumor mill. The rumors are churning everywhere about Daredevil and Jessica Jones, and about how they're going to be reincorporated into the Marvel Universe. But retcon, they're just going to ignore everything that happened on Netflix, and they're just going to bring them back with their own characters. We could see the Inhumans brought back. They could just ignore the TV series and just retcon them and bring them back as something totally new. I mean, we could see that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, Chloe Bennett is still out there, so why not? And I mean, certainly Miss Marvel is an Inhuman.
Indeed.
So
I was gonna say the thing that will be interesting. I agree with your theory, Chris, that there's going to need to be they're going to use some event to explain why the Avengers need to be reassembled again. I I'm we'll see. I don't exactly think that they will do. And I have no proof of this, but I don't exactly think they're going to do the siege of Asgard as the inciting action. I think they may try to make it a little simpler, because I know when it comes to MCU and how complicated comic books can be, and various like teams and storylines and arcs, and not to confuse like, casual audiences, they may try to use, whether it's Dark Avengers or whether it's Thunderbolts, however way they decide to go, that something that they do, whether it's the Dark Avengers or the Thunderbolts, something that they do causes is so despicable that it rallies a new team of Avengers to rise and to create a team and to get rid of them, so that way there is just the Avengers team and not this twisted, perverse version of the team. Kind of similar to what we're seeing now, even ironically, what we're seeing now, even in this show where we had John Walker. So like we had John Walker arise initially, and because he was a twisted, perverse version of Captain America, it caused the rise of Sam to, take that mantle. So I think maybe it might be something along those lines where, just as you're saying now, and what I was mentioning before in other episodes of either seeing the rise of the Thunderbolts or the Dark Avengers, even though I feel like I'm really going to try to double down on that Dark Avengers and Thunderbolts merging, so to speak. But I definitely feel from either of those teams or the hybridization of those teams that it will incite, or cause the need for the Avengers to officially reassemble, who are now, disbanded. Now, before, I know I was talking to you about Carly, and talking about how I feel that she isn't dead. I believe initially they may try to say that she's dead on paper, but it's kind of similar to what happened in Captain America Winter Soldier, where Steve was shot and he was in the hospital. We have to remember that she took the super soldier serum, so even though she can die from a bullet wound, did it really hit a vital area? And if it didn't, maybe it's going to just take her a while to heal. So maybe they have her on life support at the raft to heal up until they're ready to use her again, and until she's ready to be fully healed. And maybe on paper they're saying that she's deceased when they have ulterior motives for what they want to do with her. Because we didn't, blatantly see her, or it wasn't blatantly said that she's dead. I mean, yeah, he carried her off and he brought her to, the medics. I mean, we assume that she's dead, but somehow I have a feeling that she might be back.
I mean, while it's not Wolverine healing properties, but the super soldier serum does give you some healing property, advanced healing properties.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I think it's not impossible that even if she doesn't, say, do a Wolverine and heal up from a near fatal gunshot wound, they can always kind of go and make some sort of, do some sort of deathlock thing with her, where she's like becomes a, or make her Winter Soldier 2.0. Let's just say, where they basically brainwash her and use her to be a super assassin, in which case that could again be, a big comeback for Captain America 4. Or
Definitely.
something else going forward, yeah.
Definitely. So I was going to say, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, and Chris, just for full disclosure, I did take the super soldier formula, and all that happened was I lost all my hair. So just say no to the super soldier formula, kids.
They never tell you about the side effects.
Yeah.
So we are in agreement that that there will be a team. I know we've had our different reasons on how that may come to be, but there will be. We can all agree that there is other teams that are forming. One thing that I have said in prior episodes that I didn't like about that I hope they don't continue with Bucky is yes, but in a little earlier I said that he had that redemptive arc. However, one thing that I mentioned before that going forward we don't see is that, and both of you all will appreciate this, I hope they do not make him the MCU's Worf, where where he is just there to show how powerful someone else is. Because that,
Yeah.
if anything, if I'm thinking of a pet peeve that I have when it comes to like superheroes or any type of like action franchise where you have a villain turn another leaf and they become good, is that while I understand as a villain they have to be formidable and they have to be dangerous and you have to make them so elusive and powerful, when it always seems like when they become an anti-hero or a good guy, they become far less formidable than they were. And I know one person argued with me and said that, well, of course they have to be less formidable because, they aren't, trying to explicitly kill someone. But I would argue that while I agree, with what you're saying, you can still make them formidable without them losing a lot of the edge that they have. Like, they can still, maybe they're not explicitly trying to kill or destroy someone, but you could still demonstrate in their efforts to just incapacitate someone, still demonstrate how formidable they are as an opponent. So like, I'll go way back and think of my childhood of like Power Rangers. Like I'm thinking of like the Green Ranger, where he was started off as bad and as soon as he became good, he was like useless, which irritated me as a kid. And even, and I'm sure you guys can think of other instances of other series that you guys have seen where, you have a villain, turn another leaf and become good. And they are far less interesting once they become good. As soon as that heel change happens, they're far less interesting. And then you find yourself asking, well, couldn't they do this and this and this? But because they're not like a villain anymore, all of a sudden they're limited in what they're capable of doing. So like that trope is something that irritates me to no end. So hopefully going forward, that doesn't happen with Bucky, and hopefully in doing so, it can follow through with the prior theory of him being White Wolf. So we will see about that. But with that being said, guys, I'll close it off there. Before I let you guys go, can you tell folks where they can find you? Whoever would like to go first.
Well, people can find me on Facebook at Josh Pritchett Jr. Or just Josh Pritchett. Also, you can find my reviews here on Movers and Shakers on the main website. And also, my most recent story for Brave New Girls is now out in softcover. So it is called Arms, and we did a really good job with this most recent sales. So please check that out. Thanks.
Everyone, if you want to follow my exploits, you can follow me on Instagram, which is Verde Cosplay. And if you want to follow me on Flickr, that is DCVol1994. I look forward to seeing more of you on Movers and Shakers.
All right, cool beans. Again, I want to thank my co-host for coming on and talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier on this episode of Debrief, the Falcon and Winter Soldier chat. It looks like this might be the end of at least this series, guys. Now that we know that we will not have a season 2 and that we will be hopping on to the films, but keep it locked because we will have other shows that are on the way. As always, I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Choi ENT, which you can see down below. Also at Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. And of course, as always, guys, you can find us at Movers and Shakers Unlimited on Instagram and Move and Shake UNLTD on Twitter. So with that being said, thanks so much for watching, guys. Be safe out there, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.